silly example, but there are certain structural things that are true of all things. We would use what kind of language to talk about it that Aristotle didn't have?
Anatomy?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say genetics. Today, we would talk about the formal cause in terms of the genetic code that explains why I turned out the way I did. All the way down to my what? All the way down to my eye color, whether or not my earlobes are attached or are not attached, etc. Yeah?
Does it just cover living things? Or would it cover, like, I don't know.
Well, he was more concerned with living things,
okay,
but it would include things like rocks as well. Rock formations, etc., etc. In other words, things are structured in particular ways. And I don't want to go off on a tangent here, and I don't think this example is a tangent. How many of you have been to a place in Ireland called the Giant's Causeway? I highly recommend it. There is a similar structure, but not as impressive, on the Scotland side. It is a geologic formation that, because of the kind of rocks and minerals that were in it, and because of the kind of volcanic activity that took place, there are these big hexagonal columns that came out of the ground. It is amazing to look at because they are so perfectly geometrically structured. You would think that they had to have been what? Yeah, that somebody would have had to chisel them that way. But no, nobody chiseled them that way. They just happened to form that way because of the particularities of the volcanic activity and the kinds of rock with the mineral that bubbled up out of the ground at the time. But yeah, even the form of those rock formations at the Giant's Causeway could be explained this way. Because of the way that certain kinds of rocks crystallize and so forth, and that's admittedly someone from the geology department could really explain this properly, but I hope I've given you the idea. It goes all the way down to inorganic things too. There are formal structures underlying things. Efficient cause. The efficient cause refers to the way the author describes, and I think it makes it pretty clear. The efficient cause refers to the triggering thing or event. And when I say the triggering thing, we mean the event that happened that was absolutely necessary. That if you took away that event, you would not have the thing that we're talking about. Now, I want to make this dirty and blunt. What is the efficient cause of my existence?
Your mom and dad.
Yeah, my mom and my dad got it together. That's all we need to say, because I don't want to think about it either. But yeah, if that one event had not happened, I would not exist. Now, admittedly, there are a lot of things that go into sustaining my existence. Like if I fail to eat enough food, don't get enough exercise, somebody would decide to blow me up one day. I mean, I'm not suggesting anybody do that, but those are all the disseminating causes that go into my ongoing sustenance. That's not what the efficient cause is. The efficient cause refers to the one event that is absolutely necessary to have brought about my being. Now notice we talk about efficient causes in terms of events that happen. For example, if we ask what was the cause of the auto accident, we are in effect looking for the efficient cause. We say, oh, well, he was smoking in the car and the cherry dropped out of his lap and he got distracted, lost control. We would say, well, the fact that the cherry fell into his lap, of course, that wouldn't have happened if what? If he hadn't been burning one while he was driving. I guess this is my public service announcement against all kinds of distracted driving. But yeah, the fact that it dropped into his lap was the efficient cause of the accident. This is the way we use the word cause on an everyday basis. Now this is the granddaddy of them all, folks. This is the Aristotelian conception of cause that probably has the most long-lasting philosophical impact. It will also have the most long-lasting theological impact moving forward. When we talk about everything having a final cause, we are speaking of things in terms of their purpose or purposes. And the word that is associated with the final cause, and please don't forget this word, this is one of the most important concepts in the history of ancient philosophy. It will actually have lasting impact up into the present. It's such a big deal. Now this word telos is where we get our prefix, telo. If we use a telescope, the telescope helps us to project our vision way out into the distance. A telephone helps us to speak with people at a distance. The word telos means something like to project into some kind of distance, if you will. Well, what kind of distance are we talking about? We're talking about here the ultimate end we are talking about the ultimate end or ends at which a thing aims. And along with this is the thing's order and its purpose. From the very time of my conception, to go back to that example, from the very moment of my conception, I was endowed with what philosophers call potentiality. And I want to go on record to saying that I think philosophers are oftentimes too unnecessarily convoluted. They could have just said what? They could have just called it potential, and we would have conveyed the idea well. From the very moment of my conception, I was not a full-blown human being, but I possessed what? I possessed the potential to become a full-blown human being. And to say that one achieves one's telos, we call this actuality or to actualize. To achieve my potential was for me to ultimately become what? An adult human being. From the very onset of my being, I was always sort of moving in that direction. And Aristotle made the statement that all things, he called things like, maybe you saw this word entelekes. It's in the textbook. Entelekes refer to natural kinds of things that possess telos. Entelekes are not telos, but they possess telos. There are actually three kinds of entelekes, general classes of entelekes, and they correspond with three kinds of souls. The simplest kinds of souls are what he calls vegetative souls. The philosopher's example for talking about this is an acorn. How many of you have heard this one before? The acorn has the potential to become one and only one thing if it reaches its actuality. That's an oak tree. It can't become a maple tree. It can't become a sweet gum tree. You know, that kind of thing. It also can't become a dog. It has its basic nature already built into it. And if everything happens in accordance with its needs, it will eventually become an oak tree. Just like I lack the potential to become a dog. from the very time of my start of my being, I only had within me the potential to become an adult male human being, with all of the potentials that go along with being an adult male human being. We will pick up with this next time, and then we will talk about